how would you advise that we avoid the prospect of what even the New York Times is warning about tonight, a widening war in a presidential election year where our commander-in-chief is widely considered too old, too frail, and not up to the job?
I think the first thing he's got to do is to tell us what he's doing and make sure that we're on board with that first before he takes more action. Because here's the problem, or one of many problems, is that I think the chances are pretty high that the Houthis are going to do something in some kind of a counterstrike. They're going to hurt an American somewhere, and then he's going to be forced to play the possibility of escalating another strike somewhere else. And you see, it's real easy to take on a life of its own. And we just can't get into war over something that was supposed to be a problem in the Red Sea, which was a problem and needed to be dealt with. But there were 10, 100 ways better to do it than what we're doing right now.
Nathan, your response to that concern about now a widening conflict in the start of what is going to be a tight and obviously very dramatic presidential election year, choosing the next commander-in-chief, and we hope a new one.
Yeah, Laura, I think it's irresponsible for the White House to call a lid and not let the American people hear from the president. This is a really big deal, to borrow a phrase that Joe Biden is familiar with. He needs to be explaining to the American people why this matters. And it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it doesn't take a PhD from the Harvard Kennedy School to be able to lay the case out. The Houthis are attacking American soldiers. They're attacking commercial shipping. They're putting American lives at risk. And our response has been to fight not with just one hand behind our back, but both hands behind our back. We've been scolding them and saying, pretty please. And guess what? Terrorists like the Houthis, terrorists like Iran, they don't respond to pretty please. They respond to shows of force. And so what we need to do is establish deterrence. We need to send a clear message, not by words, but by deeds, that we control the escalation ladder, that any attempt by the Houthis or their patrons in Tehran to threaten us, to threaten our people, to threaten commercial shipping is going to be met with an overwhelming response. It's the Reagan doctrine. It's peace through strength. That's how we make sure we don't get sucked into a war. If the enemies of the United States think that we're weak, that's when our chance of getting sucked into war is at its greatest.
Well, there's no warning coming from the White House tonight. I mean, there's no warning. You do this, and we know what Commander-in-Chief Trump would be doing. It'd be no doubt that this was escalated. He wouldn't have handled it this way in the first place. I don't even think this would have happened in the first place. Remember, Colonel Davis, this really picked up after the Hamas October 7th attack, heinous, barbaric attack in Israel, and this has been gaining steam now for weeks and weeks and weeks. And here we are, again, with a president could be literally asleep at the wheel. I don't know who's running the White House tonight. I think they should actually tell us who's actually being briefed, because the man who couldn't get off the stage in Valley Forge last week, I don't think is actually, looking at targets and really being clued in on what's going on.
Well, and that's my worry, that they haven't given much thought to this. And look, and I just got to tell you, I understand about hitting people hard and not doing these little pinprick attacks that we have, because that doesn't deter anybody, as we've seen graphically, and it's pretty self-evident that that's not going to be the case. But we also got to know that we can't go in and just throw a bunch of missiles into Yemen and think that's going to make any difference, even if it's a lot of missiles. Because look, Saudi Arabia just tried since 2015 to militarily cow them, and they can take a big punishment. And I think that they have a lot of capacity to endure these kind of hits and keep hitting back. And that's where they can also have their own side of this escalation ladder, which we have to be concerned about. Now that we're already in it, so now it's going to be a lot harder to manage than it was before.
And Nathan, the Iran deal, remember, which Biden kicked off, I mean, that was his thing to start his administration. That, ends up infecting this entire conversation, setting this whole situation up with as some people are even saying tonight, the coddling of the Houthis over the last few years.
Well, that's exactly right. The Biden administration came into office convinced that they were going to fix the Middle East, that the Trump administration had screwed up. And the centerpiece of their effort was, we're going to cozy up to Iran and get them back into the nuclear deal. Well, it turns out that when you allow Iran to sell billions of dollars worth of oil, peace does not break out across the Middle East. Instead, when Iran has access to billions of dollars of oil revenue, what happens is Hamas gets millions of dollars to commit terrorist attacks against Israel. Hezbollah in Lebanon gets tons of money. Shia militia groups in Iraq that are taking shots at our soldiers and our diplomats in Iraq and in Syria, they get on the gravy train as well, and the Houthis as well. So the key fact here is that Iran is the puppet master pulling all of these strings. Iran is trying to coordinate a region-wide campaign to, one, destroy the Jewish state, to destroy Israel, and two, kick America out. And the United States, under this administration, has simply not grappled with the fact that Iran is our adversary. Because if we took that seriously, we wouldn't be enriching them with oil sales. We would be squeezing them with maximum pressure, driving them to the negotiating table from a position of strength. Unfortunately, that's not the administration we have right now.